doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
Данный аппарат — это траншеекопатель, кабелеукладчик, который на 1,5-2 штыка вкапывает кабель. В работе он очень прост, то есть он прокапывает и тут же сразу закладывает. Никакой работы человеческой практически нет. Может находиться удаленно, может находиться рядом с аппаратом, чтобы контролировать более подробно. Чаще всего мы используем птичку. Ведем с птички, просматриваем дорогу, когда находимся близко к линии боевого соприкосновения.
Именно от ВСУ никакой помощи
не было. Кроме того, что они там могли периодически зайти, попросить покушать.
Первоначально нам начали скидывать в бутылках полулитровых конфеты. И записки: не бойтесь русского солдата, все это съедобно.
Да. И мы начали...
Но после этих сбросов начали приходить к нам ВСУшники.
И поэтому...
Вот мы заметили сбросы, писала ему тогда спасибо сердечком. И тогда он прислал нам записку. Первая записка такая была: не бойся, малышка, мы вас вытянем. Помор нас вытянул. Это наш...
Скидывали нам конфеты.
Все, что можно, поддержка была именно от него. Он просто красавчик.
Он помог нам вывести нас.
Операция по выводу была под его контролем. Он прилетел с запиской. В записке было написано, что мы вам завтра скинем рацию, и все. И получается, и там тоже передачка от наших кумовьевов, как записка. И в этот момент прилетел FPV-дрон, практически там, где мы стояли. Тесть был немножко, он успел убежать за гараж, так, спрятался, а я забежал в дом.
По губам смыслы сквозь слова, дай мне тебя согреть прямо в моих глазах. Теплая постель время теряет вновь, и если это сон в нем, я умом.
The end goal is obviously not just the end of the war. Obviously, that's essential and fundamental. We want to see the end of the killing and the death and the suffering, and I'm sure the Ukrainian side, I know they do as well. They want peace, but it's also about securing an end to the war that leaves Ukraine sovereign and independent and with an opportunity at real prosperity. So this is not just about ending a war. This is about ending a war in a way that creates a mechanism and a way forward that will allow them to be independent and sovereign, never have another war again, and create tremendous prosperity for its people. Not just rebuild the country, but to enter an era of extraordinary economic progress. It's a country with, Ukraine has tremendous economic potential. Ukraine has tremendous opportunity for true prosperity. Obviously, you can't do that in the middle of a war like this, but ending the war alone won't achieve that. So this is not just about peace deals, it's about creating a pathway forward that leaves Ukraine sovereign, independent, and prosperous. And so we expect to make even more progress today. And we're grateful that you would travel all the way here to Florida. We apologize for the rain. It's not supposed to be raining, but there's only certain things we can control. So thank
Welcome back to the SCIF. You know, you go away for Thanksgiving and the world falls apart or gets a lot different, I should say. So much has gone on in the last few days over the break. I'm actually pre-taping this Sunday because we'll be at the Pentagon all day tomorrow, getting our credentials and checking in and going through the orientation and meeting all the bigwigs and figuring out where our desk is going to be. So excited about that. But we got a lot for you today on the show. I've got Pete Blaber, Ukraine SitRep, a really impactful one, talking about how Russia is winning this war, essentially, and what and how they're doing it, and what the Western propaganda is doing to itself. That's really the story. It's not working in the public view, but it's working against them, I should say. So we'll talk about all that with Pete. He's got a wealth of information, lots of videos, lots of stills, lots of graphs, as Pete always has. And we've also got Tom Teague on the financial markets. We're going to go in depth into what's going on with the recent sell-off, with crypto, with the tariffs, with the Fed, all of it. We got a lot to go through. So let's go through the mission brief. Today is December 1st. This is your mission brief. I'm your host, Todd Wood. Keith Kellogg is the general who leaked to Zelenskiy. He's the leaker who leaked Trump's peace plan to Zelenskiy prior to the White House being ready. And that's why you had that big diplomatic scrum last week, in the last 2 weeks, really, on the deep state trying to stop that peace plan from going forward. So Kellogg is the one behind that. We've talked about Kellogg many times. He's one of these talking heads like Hodges and Petraeus who are out there trying to keep the war going, obviously being paid by someone else that wants the war to keep going. So that's a huge story. It's up on armedforces.press. Venezuela, the whole thing going on down there is about the elections. We've confirmed that. We'll talk about that. We're going to go through a lot of stories here in a second, but in the second segment. But the Venezuela thing is definitely about the elections, among other things, which we'll go into. That's on the Miami Independent, miamiindependent.com. And Motherhood is back. That's a good thing. A big country star has come out with a song called I Sit in Parks. And it's about a woman who made the wrong choice for her career and didn't have children. And now she's older and she regrets it. So I find this extremely positive. So anyone who has a young daughter who's growing up, or a teenager, or even one in college who's deciding on her future, make sure she sees this video. It will put something in the back of her mind, and it will pay dividends down the road as we try to regrow our Christian population. Trump annuls the autopen. That's a huge one. Wow, so much going on. And then Russia and the U.S. are looking to make money and not war. This is a huge thing. It is what we want. We want war to end, and we want to make money. So if you're here, thank you for joining us today. We're on podcast, we're on Gettr, we're on X, we're on Rumble, and we load on YouTube after the show. Please follow us on YouTube. If you haven't already, just go do it right now. Find CDM on YouTube and follow us. Subscribe. Same on CDM1 with Rumble, and CDM_press on X. And I'm at Real Todd Wood on X. Please follow me. We need to grow our numbers. We've been whacked over the last few years in trying to regrow, although we have 7 million on Truth across multiple channels. So we're free on Truth so far, at least. So we'll see. And check out whatfinger.com as your aggregator site. And I want to say hello to the crew. I'm pre-taping, so I don't see you, but I'm sure you're very, very engaged. We're going to take a break. We'll come right back on the SCIF with lots to go through. Be right back. Stay with us.
Celebrate our newest launch, Rev 7. I'm bringing you an amazing introductory offer, plus an exclusive overstock sale that you're not going to want to miss. Rev 7 is our premium energy drink that tastes great and gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. That's because there's no sugar and no caffeine. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7 that for a limited time you can try our 3-pack absolutely free. Or check out our Percale bed sheets. I can't believe I'm even going to say this. Every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs, or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, All sizes only $29.88, even the queens and kings. Inventory is extremely limited, so order now.
Pandemic, we can never be caught unprepared again. And so many Americans, when COVID hit, they had nothing in the house. Stores were shut down and doctors' offices were shut down. And even if doctors prescribed drugs, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, pharmacists wouldn't fill the prescriptions. That was a nightmare.
Now the situation is much worse. We have these horrible supply chain problems. In our emergency medical kit at the Wellness Company, we have 8 prescription drugs that are all potentially life-saving.
Most people who died with COVID, they died in the hospital because they didn't receive early treatment.
Every American family should have one of these.
I can tell you the Wellness Company kit is the answer.
When Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah, we'll give him a hearty welcome then, hurrah, hurrah. All the men will cheer, the boys will shout, the ladies, they will all turn out and we'll all...
Okay, we're back again after the break. And again, we're pre-taping. We'll be at the Pentagon tomorrow, actually for the next 3 days. And a lot going on there. We'll tell you all about it. And we'll try to do some live streaming there. Not sure it's going to happen, but we will try. Not sure of all the rules yet, but we will try. So I want to go through some stories. We're going to have Tom Teague on here in a second to talk financial markets, and then Ukraine SitRep with Pete Blaber. A lot to go through, a lot of really good stuff going to come out in both that you need to know. But let's talk about a few stories that you need to know. We tell you what you need to know, not what you think you want to know. So Trump annuls any document signed by Biden's autopen. This is huge. This means pardons. This means directives, regulations for different agencies, all kind of things that Trump says he's annulling by executive order. We'll see if that actually happens, because a lot of time Trump says things that don't actually get followed through on or get stopped by the courts. So we're going to stay on this story, but it's a big one, and we want to stay on it because we want that to happen. And then this one, Part 1, new economic relationship between the U.S. and Russia being discussed in secret between the two powers. A lot of the left is really upset about this. They're saying, yeah, it's all about the oil. Trump just wants oil. Well, yeah, America wants peace, and we want good trading relations with the world's biggest country, and we want to pull out of the Ukraine conflict and leave that to Europe. They're big enough. They have enough money. If they want to do it, it's up to their willpower. But we've talked about this earlier. This is part 2. Part 1 is in the article where we talk about, which we wrote weeks or months ago when they're before the Alaska summit. And we're really excited about this because, I did my engineering master's degree in Alaska at the University of Alaska. I know a lot about it. I know a lot about the resources and the state and the territory. And it's so much potential you just can't even imagine. And we're actually thinking about going up and doing some reporting in Alaska if we can get this war to end, which has been our goal now for some time and our priority. But go to this story on cdm.press about Russia and the U.S. looking at a different type of relationship. So we talked about Keith Kellogg being the one to leak to the press. This story is on armedforces.press. You can find it there. Go through it. We've talked about Kellogg being the guy who was running around with his phone being tracked by the Russians, and the Russians were attacking training facilities. We talked about his daughter running an NGO that makes money off the war keeping going on. So we're telling you now that Kellogg was the guy who essentially leaked to Zelenskiy and attempted to stop the peace deal, the 28-point plan that Witkoff and Putin were putting together. The Europeans are not happy about it at all. But again, we want out. If the Europeans want the war, hey, if they want the war, go fund it. You pay for it. You send your own boys. Get the U.S. out of it. Get our technology out of it. I mean, you've got plenty of technology in Europe. You can fund a war if you really want to. So it's all yours, baby. Let's look at this one. This is the story by, what's her name? Her name is Kelsey Ballerini, and she wrote this song. It's there in the video, I Sit in Parks, about a mother or a wannabe mother who's had a career and now she doesn't have children, really powerful. I hope you show it to your daughters, and I hope this makes a difference. Thank you, Kelsey, for putting this song out. It's really impactful. I think she's taken a lot of spears for this, but it needs to be said. Last one. The elections in Venezuela. It's about the elections in Venezuela. This is why all the pressure is being put on Maduro, and it's due to the fact that we say in this article that a cartel is running a massive election scheme in Venezuela. They're trying to find the servers to hit them with military action. There is about 2 trillion plus of assets, close to 3 trillion, that these guys are running. They've infiltrated all levels of the U.S. and other countries. And it's probably why the seditious six are so worried, because Trump is going to use the military to take down this whole cartel network. And with the Ukraine war ending, where are they going to go? So this is existential for the deep state, and it's why they're out there telling the military not to follow Trump's orders, or at least implying that in their video. A lot to go through on all of this. We're going to stay on top of it, of course. I've got Tom Teague coming on next to talk financial markets. There's a lot I didn't know about what's going on behind the scenes. Tom is the guy that knows, because he's connected with all of Wall Street still, very involved, just not with a big firm anymore, but he's very involved in the markets. I think you'll enjoy that. And in the top of the hour, we got Pete Blaber to discuss what's going on in Ukraine, and hopefully we're near the end game there, but the propaganda is they turned it up to 11, if you will. So stay with us. We'll be right back on the SCIF with Tom Teague.
Well, in the case of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, these are two medications that have been FDA approved for use in humans for decades. They are very, very inexpensive. Interestingly, available over the counter in almost every other country other than the US and Canada. You can just walk into a pharmacy and buy them like we buy Tylenol in much of the world, because they're that safe. And we've known for decades that ivermectin has very strong antiviral properties. It has anti-inflammatory properties, and both ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are what we call zinc ionophores. They help to move zinc from the bloodstream into the cell, which is where it needs to be in order to fight off a virus. So lots of application for these, and we have every reason to believe that those drugs also will likely have some efficacy against H5N1 or a number of other respiratory viruses that we may meet down the road.
If you haven't noticed, gold has reached a new high, all-time highs actually, and keeps going up every day. Why is that? It's because precious metals are a long-time historical store of value. And if you own a portfolio and you have assets in the fiat currencies, i.e. stocks, bonds, cash, or whatever, you're vulnerable to hyperinflation, which is coming as our debt explodes another trillion every 90 days. It's really scary. So how do you protect yourself? Go to Advisor Metals. If you look on any of our cdm.press sites, about halfway down, there's an ad for Advisor Metals. Click on it, fill out the form for your contact info, and Ira Bishotsky will contact you and talk to you. It's an easy conversation. There's no sales pitch. He's completely verified by us. He has a regulatory background we've checked into. We've checked with his bankers. We've checked with his IRA custodians for metals, and we can highly recommend Advisor Metals and IRA. So go to Advisor Metals. If you call them directly, tell them we sent you at CDM, and he'll definitely take care of you. But protect your portfolio, because you really need to. It's coming. Thank you. We're back with Tom Teague, our master of the universe from North Carolina. And Tom, I got two questions for you. What's the market trying to tell us, and what's actually happening behind the scenes here?
Yeah, so last week, in the beginning of the week, there was some, the Fed, this guy, Rick Santelli, I think said it the great way. He said people are sitting there in the Fed, and they're the board of governors, and they're all running around saying different things, and we're hearing probably too much for them. I couldn't agree more. I think we need a quieter Fed, but they made a lot of bearish statements, and since the last cut we had in October, they're basically, running around saying that they're being very hawkish in their approach, saying that, inflation's still there and there's not enough data and all this stuff. What really changed things, we were at like a 34% chance of a rate cut in the December meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, not November, but December. And that moved to just over 80% last week. And that's really what got markets going. It made bonds rally. The 10 years now at 4%, which is good. And what did it is Williams, who's the board of governor guy for the New York Fed, basically came out and said he could see another rate cut. And that he's a very influential guy. But I mean, again, back to Rick Santelli, like, if guys like me have to look at the individual members of the Fed, that's not a really good thing.
No.
They should be a lot more aligned, and they shouldn't be, and they couldn't be more divided politically. I mean, it's very obvious, and it's really frustrating. But, there's a group of people out there that say, if they cut rates, it's going to hurt bonds. That's just demonstrably false. Every time there's rate cuts, you get rallies in bonds for the simple reason that people can't hold cash in short-term treasuries and get the same yields they were. So that money will either move into equities or it'll move into bonds, for people who have to hold bonds, and that drives yields down, and that's what's good for the housing market. The employment numbers that have come out, although we haven't gotten a lot of data because of the government shutdown, have all showed that the job markets are softening. Last week we got a PCE print, and that was in line and even lower if you look at food and energy included in there. So things are moving the right direction. Trump cut the tariffs on I think coffee and bananas potentially, and that's definitely going to help things, help food prices in general. He's done some deals with Argentina, which is, a lot of people gave him criticism for, but beef prices, and I'm in that industry, were way too high. I just think that this is the linchpin on the market. If you look at the rest of the market besides the Magnificent Seven, it's still kind of struggling. You had Home Depot come out with earnings which were weaker. Lowe's, which came out with earnings, they were better than expected. But you can tell the housing sector is still soft. And Home Depot, in their comments around their earnings, they were saying that the big projects were being held off right now. So it really is all about interest rate policy, and it really is all about the Fed deciding that they're going to do what's right and trying to get out of a really restrictive stance more to a neutral stance.
So do you think that there's a big hubbub on immigration right now? I don't think Trump's been as aggressive as most people would like, but there has been, I think, 2 million is a number I've seen thrown around that have gone out by themselves, including some of the ICE deportations. So that is starting to impact the labor market and maybe driving up prices. I don't know. What are you seeing on that?
I kind of have a different view on that. I mean, I think that the less people you have, the less pricing pressure there's going to be on stuff.
Okay.
I don't think we can draw a real comparison yet. I don't think we can say that, like, all the jobs that are being taken away are quality jobs, and it'll drive the price of those jobs up because there's less people doing them either. I think we got to wait and see. And a lot of these immigrants, there's probably a number of them, and I don't know, this is just what I'm sort of thinking, is that a lot of these immigrants are probably here just getting stuck in from like the last couple of years. So it certainly hadn't made prices going down, them entering whatever they were entering into the labor force. So I'm not sure that we'll see the other thing.
Interesting. Okay. What about the tariffs? What are you seeing? I know you mentioned the two commodities that Trump was trying to soften, but how's the rest of it going, do you think?
Well, I mean, I think it's obviously going well. They're collecting revenues. I think, we're still waiting for the Supreme Court to make a decision. So I think that's hopeful that they'll stay. I think they've been effective. I don't think they've been inflationary. And I think most people have realized that they're not. And there was a study that Mary Daly, who's like the Fed governor of San Francisco, I believe, that she had done showing that tariffs never really raised prices. It lowered prices in the end. You know, all this fear mongering around that, you know, it's obviously very disruptive. And we are in a society and in an economy where corporates run everything. They run our government, you know, they influence everything. So they were really caught off guard by this, even though Trump said he was going to put tariffs on stuff. And what he's trying to do, he's trying to rejig the economy and make it more inclusive for everybody. And that's really, these bad trade deals really decimated our labor force. It moved jobs overseas. It made us reliant on overseas products. And you look at like rare earth metals, you know, the Chinese were doing this stuff and manufacturing or producing the rare earth metals, refining them, and they were undercutting everyone in the world. And that's what China does consistently across, you know, industries. They find one, they enter it, they price everyone out of it, and then they control it. And, you know, we have plenty of rare earth metals in this country, or minerals in this country, and we can get to them. And I think, you know, it's important that Trump keeps, we do okay in the midterms, which is questionable, like what his strategy is there now. But, you know, I think we got a good shot of starting to build that up and get more independence. And that's really the other thing about the tariffs. Like if you go back into the COVID era and you look at what the tariffs did, what are doing to try and move the supply chains away from China. China really hurt us with their supply chains, and they did it absolutely intentionally. You know, if you're sitting in Beijing and you think, how can I hurt the U.S.? Well, we have a lot of debt. We have a lot of consumer demand, and we have a very quick transmission mechanism for money to get out, money supply to get out. So cause inflation, slow the U.S. down. And that's another thing that China does. Their adversaries, or their perceived adversaries, they go out there and try to slow them down. That's what they've done with Europe, and it works. You know, and then they catch up and they fill the gap, and that's part of their strategy. And I'm not sure if people in Washington are just ignorant or they just don't want to admit it, but that's what's going on. So I think these tariffs are immensely productive. I think it will move supply chains back to this country. I think that the Fed needs to revisit this 2% target on inflation, because it's going to be hard for us to, like, you know, reposition ourselves, build factories, onshore the manufacturing of a lot of stuff, do the infrastructure we need to do, whatever we did, like all this stuff that's part of the golden age. We're going to have to accept maybe hotter, you know, maybe hotter prices for a little bit. Maybe, you know, not like 5% or something crazy like that, but you know, maybe the right target is between, you know, 2.5% and 3%, and then we can grow.
So do you think we're in a period like the first 2 years of the Reagan administration, where we had a recession? You know, I don't know if we're in recession or not, but where we had an economic, I guess, slowdown before the boom. Do you think we're there?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. The biggest thing here is that, and I've looked at that period, like, you know, even before Reagan, and a lot of people blame Arthur Burns, who was the Fed chairman at the time during the Carter years, for the inflation we saw. But if you really look back, it was the Iranian Revolution. They went from 6 million barrels a day to 1.2 million barrels of production a day during the revolution. And then as a result, they had a war right after with Iraq, and that took more oil off the market. So the oil price like doubled during that period. That's really what caused inflation. And the interesting thing about Arthur Burns, he's the guy that gets blamed for everything. But I think, you know, Arthur Burns was more concerned about the labor markets and employment than he was about, you know, the gyrations in oil price. And I kind of believe the Fed needs to do their job better. And it is, like I said, it's very political. So I think the Fed is the reason that we're having like headwinds in the economy right now. You know, companies have to roll a lot of debt, because, you know, everyone who was borrowing during the low yield years, the very tight spread years of COVID, is now looking to roll debt, and rolling at higher rates is slowing down the economy. And the mortgage market, you know, housing is 16% of our economy roughly. And so, if housing's slowing down because rates are too high, that's going to slow down the overall economy. It's going to ultimately hit consumers. So, again, it's all about the Fed. And I think, if these guys play ball, we've got 3 more meetings that Powell will be a part of before he's replaced. If they cut this time, I think just my sort of gut tells me the way markets are reacting, there's still some time that we can turn this economy around. And if markets react and they don't go in all hawkish after they cut in December 10th, then I think, we got a good chance that the economy will hold and we'll be okay.
So what is this whole risk off move about? I mean, we had the crypto sell off, the market sold off. I mean, what was the driver of that recent activity?
I mean, part of it, I think, is, and a lot of people aren't talking about this, but Japan is doing like a major stimulus right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of carry trades that have been owned, and with yields widening and yen, which they did, we're seeing, I think, some unwinding of U.S. assets. I think that's part of it. I think crypto got to a point. There were some big whales that had crypto from very long time ago that were selling. I think that didn't help, and it just got to be a very crowded trade. When people start getting complacent in markets and think that things are just going to keep going up forever, that's usually when stuff corrects. When they don't move, then they start correcting. So
what about Go ahead.
And that was also like NVIDIA. You had this guy Michael Berry, who was trying. I mean, this is one thing that I find interesting. There's so many. When I was young, a lot younger than I am now in markets, you had institutions that basically drove markets. So all of these people had, a lot of, financial literacy and could understand, what companies were doing and what made sense and what didn't make sense. And now you've got a bunch of retail guys that chase things around and just act on stories from Reddit and tweets without actually looking into it. So Michael Berry came out and, NVIDIA posted phenomenal earnings, but they're looking, and finding stuff like, well, Michael Berry was saying NVIDIA's depreciating or rather not NVIDIA, but the all of these all these guys that have data centers, they're depreciating the chips too slowly. Well, there's a visible market where you can see chips and where they're trading. So there was a big attack on NVIDIA. It was up 5% after earnings, after they blew the doors off. And then, NVIDIA has been basically in kind of like a risk off mode, and that drove a lot of the chip stocks lower. But, having said that, as soon as the rate profile of a rate cut went from like 30 to 80, all the cyclical stocks started rallying again. So that's made up for it.
What about last question, market manipulation? I know you've had some thoughts on this. Are we still seeing some of that in the markets, do you think?
Oh yeah, I believe so. I completely believe so. I mean, I think that like there's stocks that, and I'm probably going to get a lot of grief for this, but there's stocks that do well with the deep state. And there's stocks that have headwinds because the deep state doesn't like what they're doing. I don't have any hard evidence on that. I just believe it happens. So I think there's some of that going on. NVIDIA, if you think about how disruptive AI is and what AI will do in terms of exposing the narrative, ultimately, if you've got enough AI participants, we've talked about that before, I think that I would say, NVIDIA is facing some headwinds from that deep state. I think Google is not facing headwinds from that deep state. And because Warren Buffett bought some of that. But, that's just my personal opinion.
Totally get it, man. Anything else, Tom, on this Thanksgiving weekend?
No, not a lot. We have a short day today, so we'll get more info in the next couple of weeks, and December 10th is when the Fed meets. So that's what you got to look out for.
All right, Tom. Have a good weekend. Take care, my friend. All right.
Take care. Bye-bye.
I'm a naturopathic doctor. We are in the world of medicine very acquainted with many modalities, but probably the one most familiar with everybody would be two things: homeopathy and herbals or herbs, maybe some nutrients too, vitamins, minerals, that kind of thing. Now, we do know a lot about the drugs because we have to find out what drug you're taking affects you and what nutrient it depletes you of, because most every drug pharmacy product will deplete something. So we have been trained and we have a database that we can check into that says this is going to take your B12 away. The pharmaceutical company cannot patent organic substances made by the body. You're not born short of Advil. You're not born short of Ritalin.
Yeah.
You can be born short of insulin, right? The answers to staying healthy and keeping away from even SARS or any of those things getting into you is staying healthy. You and I get sick because our terrain gets out of balance. Well, that's the same thing in the soil. You and I are made from this thing called dirt. And when we get out of balance, we have the same thing happen. Weeds start to grow in our body. Right? And that's what we want in our body. We want nutrients that we don't understand how to get well enough yet because our suppliers are lacking knowledge on nutrient density foods.
So this is what drove you to develop this, was your knowledge of this, right?
Right. You know that.
I'm excited to announce that we're having a huge sale on overstock and brand new products. For example, My Pillow Percale bed sheets, every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. Our Percale bed sheets are breathable, cool and crisp, and they're perfect for spring and summer. And check out Rev 7, the next generation of energy drinks. It tastes great, and it gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. Best of all, it's actually good for you. And for a limited time, try our 3-pack absolutely free. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs, or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes, only $29.88. Twin size, full size, queen size, king sizes, all $29.88. Inventory is extremely limited at this price, so order now.
Welcome back to Ukraine SitRep. I am actually in DC getting ready to do about a week of media week at the Pentagon with about 18 different interviews. It's going to be interesting. We'll try to stream live while we're there a little bit, but we're going to pre-tape a lot. And that's why we're pre-taping our good friend Pete Blaber now about multiple issues. We're going to talk Ukraine, but first I want to talk Venezuela. Pete, what's your understanding of what's happening there?
Yeah, so it's incredibly nuanced. We mentioned it last week about the logic of why. You got to state 1, 2, 3. What are we fighting for? And we hadn't heard that, but we have a better understanding. There's quite a bit more fidelity, and with talking to contacts, we understand better what the urgency and what the purpose is. This all goes back to not just the 2020 election. There was knowledge even before that. A lot of people might be surprised to learn that Smartmatic, the software maker of Dominion voting machines that were used in the 2020 election, is owned and operated out of Venezuela. It's owned by Venezuela through some cutout LLCs. The 3 founders are Venezuelans who went to the Venezuelan equivalent of MIT. That software was tested as far back as 2008 in California, wouldn't you know it. It was, and believe it or not, because 2008, California was I think Schwarzenegger was either still in as governor or he just left. It still had some legitimacy. And guess what? California rejected the Smartmatic software, said that this looks like it was designed to steal elections. So we know what happened in 2020. A lot of states have outlawed Dominion voting machines, and in fact, there's only one county in America, a large county, that says it's still using them, and that's LA County, next door to me.
Georgia still uses them too.
Okay, with the Smartmatic software. So there you go.
Well, not they're Dominion, so I don't know. I mean, it's the same. Yeah.
Right, it is the same because Dominion's a Canadian company, and
that's one of the issues is they've kind of had babies everywhere, so they've got ES&S and several others that run the same stuff or similar stuff. But go ahead.
Yeah, so a lot of information, a lot of good work's been done. I know Gary Burnson, the ex-CIA guy, has got a book out. It's a good, comprehensive book. A lot of people have been talking about this, but it's now a fact. The good proportion of the servers where votes were gone and washed during the 2020 election were in Venezuela. The software, the guys who operate the massive behind-the-scenes group of individuals, bots, and everything else who monitor the algorithms is in Venezuela. The amount of money the cartel in Venezuela has is in the trillions of dollars. So they've go way beyond any Mexican cartel in capability and capacity. And so not only that, but Maduro has welcomed in Al-Qaeda agents and provocateurs, and there's no doubt there's Al-Qaeda in Venezuela. Some of them use a rat line over land to get into the U.S. Others are just there operating, trying to continue to gain inroads in Central and South America. So they know beyond a shadow of doubt that this cartel is 100% operating against the United States in both drugs and voting machines. Sickeningly, there's empirical evidence of meetings between Americans in the Democratic Party and those individuals from Smartmatic. The heads of the Black Lives Matter protest group during the height of the protests visited Venezuela and reportedly were given $40 million while they were down there, cash, as a donation to BLM. So wow. It's a real cesspool. There's plenty of national interest, but again, that needs to be described. I believe, I know you do too. Nothing's going to be simple down there, and right now, starting a war, I think, would be catastrophic. But there's a national threat down there, and I just don't know if direct action is the way to neutralize it. But that's what we know, and that's an update on Venezuela.
Well, I mean, there's the issue of confronting a threat that harmed our country, which is one issue. The other issue is the elections. So, why not just get rid of all the machines? I mean, that's very simple.
Yeah. Well,
executive
the same
order,
reason, the same reason we don't have peace in Ukraine.
Yeah.
We have people in the United States who actively work against getting rid of those machines, and will use all the lawfare that they can muster, which we see every day. Every day, President Trump tries to do something in the name of best interest of the American people. It gets called out by a district judge or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
That's the reason we still have Dominion voting machines. But, if we all rise up and have fidelity on the issue, knowledge of how serious this is, I think everyone will agree that, we shouldn't have them, and they should be eradicated forever.
Well, that's a good point. You said rise up in fidelity. Part of the problem is the media, obviously, in the mainstream media, is not going to do that. The other part is the conservative Inc. media. I mean, we've had Chris Gleason on our show at least 25 times, detailing the software issues in Florida and elsewhere, but he's not invited on any of the other shows. They just, a lot of these conservative Inc. people just won't go there. So we will. We just need to get bigger and more people aware of us. But let's switch to Ukraine. Man, we got to start doing this daily, Pete.
Yeah.
There's so much news coming out, man. So where do you want to start? You want to start with the map?
Yeah, let's just go right to the battlefield, and then we'll go. So just setting this up, we know what's happened in the last few days. The Trump administration issued a 28-point peace plan. It was immediately delegitimized by someone leaking it. We've heard from people on the ground that was Kellogg, who does not like Witkoff. And those were reliable sources. I've seen it in the media also since then. So, right off the bat, the friction started. Zelenskiy is in a position where he wasn't in before. He's obviously the NABU has hard evidence that a minimum of 100 million. I've heard it's in the billions. It's the 100 million's one bribe. The total is a couple of billion at least.
Yes.
And remember, we put 180 billion into Ukraine. So all that is going on. Zelenskiy knows his time is limited. Yermak was forced to resign and then said, "I'm going to the front."
Yeah, he ran to the front.
That's what he says. But what it's like a husband who just killed his wife, leaving a fake suicide note, and then traveling to Florida or whatever under a new name. This is just his way. It's a witness protection program. I hope it's not supported by the U.S., but to me, it's his way of disappearing. He's going to go to the front. You'll never hear from him again, and he's going to live somewhere with, definitely tens of millions. We know Zelenskiy has at least $1 billion. So this guy probably has the same. But that's what's going on now to the battlefield. This is just what Pakrovsk, which we've talked about before. You can see Pakrovsk is 100% cleared right now. That's on the left. To the right is Mirnograd. The only thing left open is the city center. These guys were abandoned. This is, I focus on this one because it's the object lesson in what was broken throughout this war in Ukraine as far as command and control. It was all political. It was all part of the ruse. You remember the air assault raid we showed with the special ops guys, the 11 and 11 that were landed, the first air assault raid of the war. Insane that you'd even send a helicopter to the front, but that's desperation. That showed their desperation. That was a political move. It's been confirmed. Those guys were all found. They all had their flag. The two of them had flags out with cameras when they were killed. But that was a 100% political move. And I only bring it up because that happens all the time, because this just showed that the entire war from the Ukraine Western side is just a production. It's just a mirage that you're seeing, that they present to you with their narrative and their little clips from their perspective. To send 22 of your most elite forces in to plant a flag and take a picture so that you can convince the rest of the Western world, all they care about, that, hey, what Russia says about Pakrovsk is another lie. We control it. But, and I laugh, not because it's funny, because it's so outrageous that this is how stupid they actually are, that they believe that they can continue to pull the wool over, that the way to solve problems that your lies caused is to lie more. And that's what we see out of not just the EU, but these influencers and the warmonger globalists, even in the US, who continue to support this war and put up obstacles to the Trump peace plan. So this just shows the progress. Mirnograd is almost completely taken. Those guys are going to die. Russia is dropping leaflets constantly, so there's a steady stream of POWs surrendering. But still, just as we've reported before, some of those guys, barely know they're surrounded because they have no contact with the outside world. So,
wow, amazing.
Yep.
Where do you want to go next? The battlefield?
Let's just go to some of these other battlefield. I just want to show some of the stuff that we have. So this is the roads to Pokrovsk, and I think they're great pictures. You can just go right through them, Todd. Just to show our our viewers again, this is war. This is the war zone. This is these are Russians. There's a Russian on a bike. You see they're moving in the fog with these vehicles because drones are almost ineffective in serious fog like this. So keep going. I think there they are repairing the nets. You're going to see what they've come up with to counter the Ukrainian nets. Yeah, and then you just see these vehicles. All the vehicles are cut apart, so you can jump out. Notice there's no doors on any vehicle. That's so you can dive out before a kamikaze drone hits the back. There's no back. There's a car. There's no doors again. Lightweight, good gas mileage. No one cares. You're not going to lose anything if that thing gets blown up.
I didn't do all of them. I only did 5. So
okay, that's all right. But just a shot, and you can see the weather. It's getting nasty over there, cold, rainy, which is a advantage to the Russians. Huge advantage to the Russians. So next, go ahead. I think we have now just some of the friction against the peace treaty. It's in your face. So this is I like this photo because in a quick snapshot it tells you everything you need to know about the EU's bluster, which right now is the bluster of, hey Russia, we're not accepting this, and if you think we're scared of you, you're wrong. Well, here's what they actually send out. This is Finland training. I guess they're training how to get on the back of a pickup truck. Because they're laughing, but look at the line down below. And folks, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to make some crass joke about, some countries training. I'm just telling you, you just saw the reality of war. It's a uncompromising, incredibly arduous, worst time of your life. Every moment could be a moment of complete despair, unless you have a powerful enough mind to change your frame of reference and to stay focused on your purpose. And the only way you can win wars like this, in the category World War I, World War II, Korea, is with hardened, resilient soldiers. And you don't shake and bake hardened and resilient soldiers. That doesn't mean you can't train them up, but man, it's got to be quality training. That's not threatening their lives, kicking them in the head like we've seen videos. That's teaching them, and over time, incrementally building up those traits, that resilience, that hardness, that ability to push on no matter what. And so, this bluster you're hearing is insane. And this is a great follow-on. This is Viktor Orban. He just visited Moscow. And his statement is as profound as it is accurate. The war is lost, but admitting this will cause a political earthquake. He went on to say, we can go to every phase of this war from 2022 on. And in 2022, peace was a signature away, but that peace was sabotaged by Merkel and Boris Johnson. He has also shined light in the last few days that one of the things the EU hates about Trump is during the Biden admin, they were running this war. We were just paying for it and sending resources. They were running the war, and they can't stand this now that Trump's saying, hey, I'm not doing it anymore.
Yeah.
But Orban also pointed out that if Boris Johnson and Merkel hadn't sabotaged the Minsk Accords, that's only 2022. So 3 years ago, Ukraine would have 1 million more men alive, their best men, their patriots, their fathers, brothers, sons. They'd still have them, and they'd have all of Donbass. The only thing they wouldn't have is Crimea, but they'd have all of Donbass. There'd be no destruction. They'd have an economy. So, Orban really hit the nail on the head, and everyone needs to continue to remind themselves of this as they cast shade at the peace process. And here's the head of NATO. Again, this is the hallmark of all of these globalists, and it's the same hallmark you see in Trump derangement syndrome here in the US. The only thing that ever comes out of their mouths is accusations and name callings. I should say baseless accusations and name calling. So here's another one. How can you walk up on stage and go, he cannot be trusted, and then not give an example? There's no example. There's videotapes of Bill Clinton while he was in office being grilled. Do you trust Putin? Yes, I trust Putin. He's an honorable man. I've had long conversations with him, and we don't have anything to show where there's a reason to not trust him. And of course, that's the case today. So if someone tells you this again, say, give me an example of why we can't trust Putin. And you can't come up with one. But this is what's happening. And look how he finishes it. This is what I meant by the training. He wants to ensure that that Moscow never dares to attack, because the consequences will be catastrophic.
This is the world's largest nuclear power with a much bigger army than all of NATO combined.
Yeah,
not including the United States.
And just, Todd, so far ahead technologically, especially of NATO, of EU NATO. But even us, we need time right now to continue to solidify, to repair the damage done from 20 to 24, which was massive. And we're doing that, and we got the right people, and it's happening. But it just like training resilient and hardcore infantrymen, you can't be shaked and baked. You can't do that in a short period. You can't retrain and reorganize a military overnight. It takes time. So, you have all these globalists. Yeah, this was just, you heard this from us about the 47,000 people in October. We were talking about 1,500 a day. So Putin came out, and I put it up because Putin has never commented in this war. He's never given a statistic. He's giving them now. And he prefaced this with, because the propaganda is so outrageous from the EU, I need to state some facts, and this was one of them. But just again, you and I do it every time because we want to honor these 47,000 men in 1 month. And remember, the Alaska was in August. So there was an attempt to get Zelenskiy talking with Putin right after Alaska. If he had just gone to the table and said, we will negotiate, they'd have those 47,000, which matter. We're talking over 1 million, but this is per month. And so I believe November is going to be worse because it all across the front. Cities are falling. We had last week 2 brigades, incidents in 2 brigades refused orders. A brigade outside Uye-Puye, which is down south, refused to hold in place. They were ordered by Zelenskiy to hold in place. They were about to be surrounded. Same thing we walked our viewers through in Pakros. They said, screw this. It ain't happening to us like it did at Pakros, and they fell back on their own. So, we mentioned last week the last man to die syndrome. That's real. And in an unmotivated force that doesn't believe in their leaders, it spreads like the plague. And that's what's happening. And you can't blame the Ukrainians. their strategy, they understand it's hard broke. And of course, they understand the reality on the battlefield. You hold in place in a position you cannot hold, you're going to die. So it makes sense to live to fight another day, fall back to another position, and try again and see what happens.
So there's that. These two areas are surrounded. We discussed that.
Yep.
And this is
a great, just Yermak, who just resigned. You could see who one of his best friends is. That's Soros' son. Constantly visiting Ukraine, constantly adding money, constantly helping them choreograph the censorship industrial campaign that supports this fake mirage of a war. But that's two evil dudes right there, not giving one crap about one of those 47,000 men we just mentioned. All they care about is power and control. And that Ukraine is nothing more than is a tool for them to achieve those ends.
This is Zakharova.
Yeah, I wanted this on. This is the spokesperson for the Russian government, and she's talking about Kaja Kallas, who came out. She really is unhinged, and she's the second in command of the EU. So she came out with a speech, and she said, Russia has attacked 19 countries in the last 100 years and has never been attacked. So, 1941, 1942, the Eastern Front, which I also, if anyone out there is interested, I highly advise people to look at that. There's all kinds of good stuff on Rumble and YouTube. You can spend a half hour and see the progress of that battle. They really were fighting exactly where they are right now.
I know.
And this was the massive German attack, 3 million men on Russia, which ended up being the demise of Germany. But they fought the southern front of the Eastern Front. The southern group of forces were exactly where the battlefield is now, Pakrovsk, Uye-Puye. And interestingly enough, I did a paper on this a few years back, and I pulled it out and realized, wow, Russia learned an incredible lesson from that. So in 41, the Russians had pockets surrounded by the Germans 4 times. In one of those pockets, they lost 750,000 men. The Germans killed every guy in there, either through direct action or starvation afterwards. That happened 4 more times with massive numbers, 300,000, 200,000, surrounded in pockets. So, it's funny about war, and they always tell you, read history, study history, especially the history of the terrain you're on. So I think if people had studied the history of battles on this terrain, they would have learned a lot. Remember, the Battle of Kursk was the biggest battle of this whole campaign.
So there's another layer to this, Pete, in that I've always thought that what they're doing is using NATO forces and the U.S. military, essentially, in our intelligence and command and control and everything, to fight an old war for them. Because you've got Nazi elements inside Ukraine who are using our forces to fight their war again. That's kind of the way I see this now. And that's also a depopulation exercise, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I would just add to that, again, we've pointed this out, and I didn't want to drown our viewers, but the stuff coming out of Great Britain is just disgusting. And so in that same mode, I think they, that insane hatred of Russia in the part of Great Britain that doesn't fight in wars. So I have many close Brit friends from Special Ops, Brit Special Ops, who, are my brothers. And I know they are in the exact mode we were in from 2020 to 2024. They're being held hostage. They have no say in the insanity of what's going on. But these globalists are exactly right. They want to refight the war. So
Mm-hmm.
this is another, you can see even Western media is starting because they don't want, they can no longer, some of them, promote the propaganda they've been promoting. It's worsening. It's running out of soldiers. Russian investments in mass drone production are starting to pay off. They're cutting off Ukraine's supply routes behind lines, and new weapons on the way threaten to make eastern cities like Kharkiv and Dnipro uninhabitable. So go ahead. I think we have another one that's even more relevant than this.
That's all of the ones I have. Sorry. I thought I
Okay,
got them
so
all,
just
I
on that
got
one,
5 videos, by the way, but go ahead.
Okay, so we'll go to those next. But just on that, I want to say that we talked about the corruption earmark. Zelenskiy's named in all of it. It's hundreds of millions of dollars. So that's hundreds of millions, and again, I believe it's billions. So let's just call it a billion. Has been stolen from EU and mostly US taxpayers, because we put the most 180 billion into Ukraine. So, but that's not where your outrage should be focused. Your outrage should be focused on what these globalists continue to say every minute. And I just listened to two ex-US generals, Hodges and Petraeus, say the same thing. Ukraine would be doing fine if we just gave them more money. If we just gave them a couple hundred more million for the key weapons they need and the ammunition. Well, let's just take that and put that in the context of what we just found out from this corruption exposure. They took that money from those Ukrainian soldiers. And a great example of how much damage that did is to just use what was happening in Russia to contrast it. In Russia, which does not have a lot of money and understood this from the beginning, they have to be efficient with their money. And there's a great, and we'll put it on the next episode, there's a great interview by a Russian blogger of a Russian civilian who works for their drone design and manufacturing, and he's incredibly upfront. This thing should be, people should be going to school on this, on how to build a drone military. The Russians, to save money, one of the biggest things they did was they replaced their composite propellers on their drones with balsa wood. So, you think about that. The reason is elementary. First off, balsa wood costs tens of times less than composite. So let's just call it 10 to 1 savings. And all you're doing is losing a couple miles per hour in speed, which is irrelevant, and nothing in distance, because it's lighter with the balsa wood. But Russia began making their drones out of balsa wood to save money. Right now, Russia has tipped the balance in this war because they have a 10 to 1 drone advantage over the Ukrainians. Additionally, from the beginning, if anyone wants to read in my first article on Ukraine, the chronology of the Ukraine war, what really happened, you'll see that the advisors to the Ukraine military were calling them out in 2021 before the war started. One of the main things they were calling out was their squad radios don't work. They're horrible. They never replaced those squad radios. And you could replace those things with something from Radio Shack and have made an improvement on what they have, because, low voltage radios that are only transmitting short distances are incredibly difficult to intercept anyway. But at least they'd be able to talk to the guy in the trench to their left and right. They couldn't even do that. And why? Because they didn't have the new radios. Why did they lose the drone battle? Because they weren't putting the money in. They didn't take it seriously enough to do it efficiently, as if every dollar they were spending was their last. Mm-hmm. And so what people need to take away from that is this Ukrainian corruption should not be dismissed. They should not be let off as part of the negotiation. They stole money from these Ukrainian patriots who are now, dead. Let's think of those 47,000. That's how serious what they did was. And
Well,
not just
a couple of years ago in Kiev, the whole narrative was gold leaf facelifts. I mean, face, cleansing, all the girls there was so much money just washing around. It's going to be fine. And they blew all that money, essentially.
Yeah, well, the pictures will come out. Everything's being shadow banned. So Zelenskiy and Yermak live together in a basement bunker.
And the rumor is they're gay, but I can't.
Yeah, exactly. And they have a gold toilet.
Yeah.
And every time I think the Marcos has had a gold toilet, or I think it was them.
Well,
but
Yanukovych too. But no,
did he? But you think about that.
Yeah.
Why would you want a gold toilet?
No, it's obscene.
You got to be out of your mind. You should be held accountable just for being an idiot.
Yeah.
So why not a toilet made out of $100 bills? That makes about as much sense. But the corruption was in your face. Again, Zelenskiy knows nothing about military ops. He's the guy running the show. It's a mess, and Russia. No one doubts anymore this fact. Zelenskiy's got to go. No one is going to allow a peace treaty signed by an illegitimate politician to walk away and think they have a long-term solution, especially with the right-wing neo-Nazis that will continue to have major influence in Ukraine.
Well, there's my sources are telling me that and Putin and I think Lavrov came out, or maybe it was Medvedev. There's a word in Russia, zapadlo, which means I have principles and I'm not going to deal with you just out of my principles, and that's essentially what Putin is saying. He won't, because there's a video that I don't know if did you see the video? We put it out where Zelenskiy's talking on the evening address and a big wad of cocaine comes out of his nose.
Yeah, I saw it. Yep.
So the rumor on the street is like Putin is not going to deal with a drug addicted, money laundering freak, and so they're saying he's not going to sign anything with Zelenskiy. So I think you're right.
Yeah. So again, back to the propaganda, and I mentioned Great Britain. So today, the Sun came out with an article, update on the peace negotiations. Said Trump will recognize occupies Ukraine as Russia in bombshell gift to Putin to help secure peace deal after talks. So immediately, Ben Hodges got on a podcast. And remember, he's talking to Europe. He's talking to EU people, and he's telling them, "Hey, there's no deal that should give any land to Russia." Petraeus said the same thing 2 days ago on another podcast. And again, we talked last week about it, but everybody needs to remember a couple of basic facts, and they're easy to remember about the elections. Of this disputed territories. First, Crimea, March 16th to 18th of 2014 was the Crimean referendum, which was 100% called for and run by Crimeans. 98% voted for reverting to Russian control, which, remember, they consider themselves always as Russians, but they also had loyalty to Ukraine. So after that election, that 98% to leave Ukraine and join Russia, a separate poll, I think J.D. Power did it, went in to see what people thought of the election. So 91% of the people in Crimea said it was free and fair. And those same 91%, when asked what was the main reason you left, they said the only reason we left was because of the threat from neo-Nazis who were killing us without any repercussions. We needed someone to protect us. So that's March 16th, 18th, Crimea. May 11th, 2014, same thing. I want to just call this up real quick so I can read it. So on May 11, 2014, disregarding Vladimir Putin's appeal to delay it, the ethnic Russian citizens of Donbass went to vote on their independence referendum. With the neo-Nazi-led Maidan protests and Odessa massacre, they voted 89%. So that's in both Donetsk and Luhansk. 89% of voters voted for independence on a turnout of 75%. So every time you hear these globalists, these propagandists start saying, hey, there cannot be any consolation in accepting territorial losses. Anytime you hear that, you need to know that what you're hearing is a massive propaganda lie. And I'd ask anyone who is listening to go ahead and remind these people that the people of those oblasts, those regions, have a say, and they've already said it, and it can't be any clearer. I bet if you went back to Crimea and took the vote today, it'd be closer to 100% than 98, because no one wants to go back to that system. And as long as those neo-Nazis and the right wing control Ukraine, they're never even going to consider it.
So I just want to play a bit of, this isn't one of your videos, but I interviewed George Eliason in Donbass in January of 22. He's an American reporter, and he was telling me about the ethnic cleansing a lot. We've gotten a lot of pushback that we said yesterday in the article that there was ethnic cleansing in Ukraine. Well, 14,000 people died before the 22 invasion. So this is, I'm not going to play much of this, but this is George Eliason. He's in Donbass in hiding, talking. This is in January of 2022. But here we go.
Yeah, we'll start there.
Hold on, I gotta turn Ukraine on 1 second. Okay, here we go.
Ukraine is saying that Russia's on the border and they're ready to come across and they're gonna invade. But back in, it was October, November, the closest that the Russian army actually got, the military actually got, was 160 miles from the border. They were closer to Belarus than they were to Ukraine.
Anyway, I'm not going to play all that, but we've interviewed George multiple times. He's in Donbass talking about the ethnic cleansing, and I didn't take the time to find it in this video. But you can find it, just type in Eliason, Elliason on cdm.press, and you'll find the interviews. All right, back to you.
Yeah, and I'd also tell our viewers, if you go onto my Substack, substack.peteblaber.com, and go to my article, How to Make Sense of the Ukraine War, a chronology of key events and decisions. I have all the links. I have links to videos. I have links to independent reporters on video from Donbass reporting in that time frame, 14, 15, 16. And you can watch, you can see the results of the ethnic cleansing. You can hear the anguish and despair in these citizens, and almost all of them are seniors, because that's the only people that stayed back. They had nowhere to go. And remember, last week I told you Ukraine immediately cut off their pensions, so they had no money left. And Todd, I don't know if you got those videos I sent of Russia rescuing those civilians.
Yes, I'll just play some of it because it's there's no English subtitles.
Yeah. Just let's play that because I want to report some. So these aren't even seniors. They were there with their little girl.
Первоначально нам начали скидывать в бутылках пол-литровых конфеты и записки. Не бойтесь русского.
Let it go forward a little bit to
Все это съедобно.
just to show them in their house. There we go.
Но после этих сбросов начали приходить нам ВСУшники. И вот мы заметили сбросы, вот начали нас так. Да.
And this went on. The little girl started crying in one of the videos. You can pull it down, Todd. And there's two more of those, and we don't need to show them, but I want our viewers to again understand every city that Russia takes, this is what's happening. These are Russian people. So it's Ukraine that's the occupiers in eastern Ukraine, what we knew is eastern Ukraine in Donbass. These people have been begging for Russia to rescue them since 2022. When the war started. And of course, it's finally happening, but you're seeing it all over. These incredibly grateful citizens that Russia is finally back to rescue them. And again, you and I aren't taking sides here, and I'm not saying this means Russia's in the right and Ukraine's not. But when people talk about Donbass and Crimea and even Zaporozhye, they need to understand these people are ethnic Russians who want to be part of Russia. So don't listen to the propagandists. Listen to them and realize the person is lying to you when they say Ukraine should never give up any territory. It's not their territory, and it's their fault it's not their territory. By Petro Poroshenko, the words he said, which we read last time, and by the ethnic cleansing that he launched with neo-Nazis, the newly created National Guard of Ukraine, they killed 14,000 people and injured many more. And that's history. You can't cover that up. You can't escape it. That's what you did to those people. And so they're never coming back. So stop fretting over something. It's not going to come back to Ukraine. You blew that. And it rightfully so. If someone said to send Donbass back to Ukraine, the U.S. should consider going in to protect them, because these are people who have been through the worst, the most hopeless situation from 14 onward. Think about that. Think about how long they've been sucking it up under foreign control. And so, the lies continue, but, the peace talk continues to move forward. Looks like there's some actual traction going on right now. You and I will continue to monitor it, keep our viewers updated. And like you said, just about every day, I wish we were given daily updates. So maybe we'll do more next week.
Maybe we do twice a week until this thing's over. So let me just show a little bit of these videos since we got them. This is a robotic
good
lane device.
No, so what this is
Данный аппарат
a
это
wire lane
траншеекопатель, кабелеукладчик, который на 1,5-2 штыка вкапывает кабель. В работе он очень прост, он прокапывает и тут же сразу закладывает. Никакой работы человеческой
The
практически.
reason I put this in, that thing is remote controlled. It's a drone. Because remember what we said a couple episodes ago, technology changes, but the basics of war don't change. Shoot, move, communicate. Okay, that's communicate. And lazy shortcuts will get you killed. So what the Russians have always been world leaders on is everything to do with EW, electronic warfare, both protecting and attacking the other side. But this is just a perfect example. If we had a World War I and World War II veteran here, they'd tell us that's SOP. Every time you get into a position, you set up wire to the group to your left, right, and rear. And of course, the U.S. military did that all the way up till probably the 90s. And it's painstaking work, but that's how you win. And, folks, again, on technology, look at all the advances, but you know what? Nothing can intercept wire communication, direct point-to-point wire communication, unless you interrogate
stuff.
Right. So just a good example of the old and the new.
Here's one example of tit for tat, back and forth on technology. The drone nets were stopping the drones. This
is what Russia has come up with to defeat Ukrainian drones.
So those were drone nets that were stopping the FPV drones, first person vision coming in, meaning you're flying like a drone and you see where you're going. Those were stopping them so they would explode away from you and not kill you, but they're burning the nets with another drone, right? So that's technology against technology.
Yeah.
I got two more videos. I don't know really what they are. One's a guy and this one.
Штурманули бліндаж наш. І ми здалися в плен. Ми сиділи в окопі.
So he's saying that, the horror of his position, right?
Yeah, he's saying how the training of the AFU servicemen was carried out under the guidance of foreign specialists. Almost all of his were British instructors. They taught them tactics, medicine, and fire training, but their attitude toward Ukrainian soldiers was blatantly disrespectful. And, you know, you hear this a lot. Again, this is not a generalization. It's from guys who trained them. The Ukrainians were not the easiest people to train right from the beginning. It's kind of the Slav mindset. They were skeptical, and they should be. I can't even imagine some of the trainers that were probably sent out to train them because they knew they were fighting a different war from Afghanistan or Iraq. So you needed to win them over. And if you don't take the time to win your pupils over with respect, you're never going to get it. And if you add in the same thing they're dealing with their own chain of command, which is disrespect instead of respect, you're never gonna get into them. And this guy said, you know, the result is undisciplined forces. My colleagues were engaged in mass looting, robbing private homes, and stealing valuable objects and property of civilians. And again, why is that important? Because people don't understand. It's the Ukrainian soldiers who are in foreign land when they were occupying these cities. They were the occupiers. They didn't care about these people. They're ethnic Russians. Treat them like shit. And every ethnic Russian says that. They survive by hiding out and never peeking their heads up when the Ukrainians were around.
So one last video. I'll just play a little bit of it.
По губам смыслы сквозь слова дай мне тебя согреть прямо в моих глазах. Теплая постель время теряет вновь. И если это сон в нем, я его могу целовать.
So that's some of the drone defense technology.
Yeah, the adaptive, you know, you could see the guy working on it, and that's, again, good soldiers. They're always working on their position. They're always improving their position. It doesn't matter. You have tons of time in combat between, you know, moments of terror and excitement. And good soldiers work on their equipment, improve their positions, and that's what you see. And it happens on both sides. It's important to point out Ukraine has many great soldiers too who have just been abandoned by their chain of command. So plenty of lessons from them, but we don't see them because there's no press. There's no even Ukraine itself does not have embedded cameramen just showing us, and the reason is obvious. They don't want to show them. They don't want their soldiers talking to the press. They don't want to show the predicament they're in. They want to control the narrative as tightly as possible. And again, when people are skeptical and say Russian propaganda, ask them, why is there still no press to this day? Why does Zelenskiy and no one in Ukraine allow foreign reporters to go to Pokrovsk, even though they're allowed from either side? They can come in from Russia or Ukraine side and view what's happening. And it's because what we started with, this is a massive manufactured mirage. Desperate men make desperate moves, desperate men and women. The desperation is apparent in the EU and the globalists right now. They're trying any lie they can come up with to somehow make it seem like it's not that bad, that we should forget about the corruption, that we have some duty to protect Ukraine, and that it's completely irresponsible to even talk about returning these lands, which the people have already voted overwhelmingly to do to Russia. And that's as much as we can do, Todd, from here.
Yep. So I want to second your point. We're not anti-Ukraine or pro-Russia or vice versa. We're pro-humanity and pro-truth. And we want this war to end, and it's not we're not helping the Ukrainians. I know that for a fact. I had a Ukrainian refugee family in my house for 8 months. I know what's going on over there. So anyway, we'll see you next time. And Pete, we'll talk about trying to move this to twice a week until this conflict is over. Hopefully that won't be long from now. All right. Take care.
Sounds good, Todd. Take care.
Right, bye.
Well, in the case of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, these are two medications that have been FDA approved for use in humans for decades. They are very, very inexpensive. Interestingly, available over the counter in almost every other country other than the US and Canada. You can just walk into a pharmacy and buy them like we buy Tylenol in much of the world because they're that safe. And we've known for decades that ivermectin has very strong antiviral properties. It has anti-inflammatory properties, and both ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are what we call zinc ionophores. They help to move zinc from the bloodstream into the cell, which is where it needs to be in order to fight off a virus. So lots of application for these, and we have every reason to believe that those drugs also will likely have some efficacy against H5N1 or a number of other respiratory viruses that we may meet down the road.
If you haven't noticed, gold has reached a new high, all-time highs actually, and keeps going up every day. Why is that? It's because precious metals are a long-time historical store of value. And if you own a portfolio and you have assets in the fiat currencies, i.e. stocks, bonds, cash, or whatever, you're vulnerable to hyperinflation, which is coming as our debt explodes another trillion every 90 days. It's really scary. So how do you protect yourself? Go to Advisor Metals. If you look on any of our cdm.press sites, about halfway down, there's an ad for Advisor Metals. Click on it, fill out the form for your contact info, and Ira Bishotsky will contact you and talk to you. It's an easy conversation. There's no sales pitch. He's completely verified by us. He has a regulatory background we've checked into. We've checked with his bankers. We've checked with his IRA custodians for metals, and we can highly recommend Advisor Metals and Ira. So go to Advisor Metals. If you call them directly, tell them we sent you at CDM, and he'll definitely take care of you. But protect your portfolio because you really need to. It's coming. Thank you. Thanks for joining us on the SCIF today. We put a lot of effort in putting all that together for you. We'll be back tomorrow, another pre-tape actually, but it's going to be a stunning show with Chris Gleason and other guests who are going to come on. Rob Cunningham's going to come on and talk financial markets. So a lot to discuss. We'll be back tomorrow. Appreciate you joining us today. Sign up for our social media. Oh, do me a favor. If you haven't done it yet, go to my.cdm.press. That's my.cdm.press. And sign up for our no ad subscriptions. It's $10 a month or $100 a year. Pay the $100, get it out of the way, and you get access to all of our sites with no advertisements. So we put out so much content, and you can get everything you need to know around the world sent to you through our channels, and you won't see any ads pop up. We have to serve ads, guys. We got to make money and survive and thrive. But if you don't want to see the ads, pay us $10 or $100 a year, and you don't have to see them. So thank you for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow on the SCIF, 10 to noon, midday Eastern. Take care.